Hello and welcome back to the Indian Wisdom Podcast. I'm Dr. Raj Balkaran, and today you will hear a story or two about a sage named Durvāsa who is not exactly a happy camper typically. He is on the more irritable side of life, trigger happy even. Well, what do you mean? I thought you said he was a sage. I know, right? Hmm. Why would there be a sage who is eager to throw curses left, right, and center? Well, the origin story of the sage might have a bit to do with his nature and symbology. So where does he come from? Well, we're all familiar with this, little figure known as Shiva, one of the great gods of Hinduism, and not just one of the three functionaries among creator, sustainer, and destroyer, but he is a destroyer himself. I think of him as actually the transformer because destruction has a very different connotation against the backdrop of a cyclical setting where the dissolution of one thing gives way to the arising of another. This is a very different context versus this kind of linear sort of, okay, that's the end of the line and that's that. And so that sort of destruction proper to my mind. So he's a great transformer, you know. And all of the deities and sages and probably many of you are aware that he can be quite dangerous when his anger is aroused because he's powerful. Power often presents to people as danger, but there are powerful people in the world who are not egotistical and who leverage their power, their privilege, their what have you, to support others. So power isn't necessarily danger. It all depends on the intentionality of the wielder. But anyhow, Shiva can be a little bit trigger happy as well, you know, throughout the ages. His wrath, his short fuse or shorter fuse than most, than Vishnu certainly, has compelled him to sort of decapitate first and ask questions later. Most famously, in the form of Ganesha, right? There's an exchange where it's Shiva who decapitates Ganesha and then replaces his head with the elephant head. And that story, I believe, has been told on the podcast. If not, it really should be. It's a really fascinating story. Also, there's a story of where he decapitates Brahma himself while he and Brahma and Vishnu are having this celestial debate about who among them should be the greatest, is the greatest of the gods. And so, he's got this little bit of a trigger happy disposition. You see, it's never unprovoked. This is crucial, yeah? He doesn't sort of wake up and think, hey, I'd really like to decapitate someone. One imagines he's kind of chill after a millennia or so of cosmic meditation. One imagines he's doing all right until something comes along and triggers his impatience or wrath. And really, this is always some form of ignorance. Okay, this is a clue to the function and purpose of um, dharmic wrath, if you will, righteous wrath, if you will. It's always a response to ignorance and typically a corrective of sorts, right? So he doesn't have much patience with ignorance. This is Shiva. Should he? I don't know. Depends on your stance, I suppose. Right? The various responses to ignorance, as we're seeing unfold in real time in our world. You have to find which path is right for you. My job is to prepare the buffet. You eat whatever is tasty to you. So there's one occasion where he returns home, Shiva, that is. Um, um, he returns home and he's met with his wife, Parvati, right? And he's in one of his moods. Something must have annoyed him on route home. And seeing that he was again in a wrathful mood, Parvati decided to take a stand. You know, she is a fairly patient entity. We can all agree on that. Kind and loving, but should she always bear the brunt of his wrath? especially when it was others who triggered the wrath. So she declared that she would not live in the presence of such an uncontained rage and removed herself from their abode. She would not return, she said, unless Shiva learned to channel his negative emotion more appropriately. Perhaps some anger management courses, or who knows, maybe some more intense asanas. Breathing, I don't. Who knows? So she leaves, and she gives him an ultimatum. And Shiva is can be quite wrathful, but the gentle wisdom of Parvati and her counsel typically gets through to him. And so he decides to take action. He went online looking for some anger management courses, but the field is so full of charlatans and profiteers that he thought that may not be the best course of action for him. So what does he do? He siphons off a portion, an amsha, a portion of his wrath. He outsources it, I suppose, and sends it to Atri, the son of Brahma, and his wife Anasuya. Why? Because the son of Brahma, Atri, and his wife Anasuya were looking to conceive a child. So, all these fascinating stories about creative conceptions, as I call it in this Mahabharata course I'm currently teaching. Lots of creative conceptions in Indic lore. But anyhow, an amsha of Shiva, indeed his wrath, contributed to the conception of the child of Atri and Anasuya, who was none other than the fiery Durvasa or Durvāsas. Okay. An embodiment of Shiva's wrath. So Durvasa was a very powerful and particularly impatient sage. And this is a dangerous combination. Yes. The famous, indeed infamous Durvasa became known far and wide for his rather trigger happy nature, a la the throwing of curses, his short temper, and his propensity to sort of unhesitatingly just launch a curse at someone, which would alter their life, their destiny, their experience. Not typically for the better, although he has been known to bless as well. So one example of this is that he once visits the hermitage of the lovesick maiden Shakuntala, a very famous Sanskrit tale. Um, Perhaps many of you know the tale of Shakuntala. Shakuntala, Durvasas is an exalted sage, and it's appropriate to receive him. Imagine the I don't know what analogy to use. Imagine a person of significance, a mayor or the prime minister walks in to a room and is sort of like ignored. That would be a little bit inappropriate. Yes. So Durvasas walks into this ashram in the woods, and Shakuntala is there, kind of staring off into space. Why? She's lovesick, lamenting. She's lamenting due to the separation and the sorrow of her separation from Dushenta. It's a famous tale. And of course, she's far too distracted. She doesn't even know her own name in this moment. She's far too distracted to notice anything about her. And she's sitting there by the gate of the ashram, and in walks in the exalted Durvasas, expecting a respectful welcome, one appropriate for any sage, much less so great a sage as an Amsha of Shiva. And nothing, crickets, not even crickets, sort of, lame violins. Because she's lamenting. The poor girl is lovesick. And he doesn't really care about that because, she should get a hold of herself. So infuriated, Durvasas curses Shakuntala. Should be completely forgotten by the one that her heart pined for. The curse is typically sort of a variation of or interlocking with the nature of the offense. It's an interesting sort of lock and key mechanism. And often both boons and curses are construed as the building blocks of destiny, you can say. So she she's cursed to be forgotten by her beloved. Yay, lovely, right? But not dissimilar from Shiva. Uh, Durvasa often sort of realizes the harshness of his punishment, the intensity of his intended corrections, and he tends to modify his curses. So he modifies this one such that Dushanta would eventually remember Shakuntala once presented with a token of her love. And this is crucial. This is the sine qua non, the essence. This is the defining feature of this tale, actually. So on another occasion, there are a number of occasions. I'll share only a couple here. Durvasa is visiting the court of the great King Rama. Yes, the same Rama of the Ramayana. Uh, this engrossing, gripping tale, the career of Rama, the noble Prince Rama, who on the day of his would-be coronation is asked to take exile into the wilderness for 14 long years. Uh, a request to which he complies unflinchingly, much to the chagrin of his own father and certainly his more hot-headed sidekick brother Lakshmana and his grieving mother. But nevertheless, Rama goes off and has adventures in the forest with his sidekick brother and his wife, and eventually he meets the Vanaras, the monkey people, and befriends Hanuman, etc., etc. Many of you know the story of Rama, but this is a point in the story of Rama in the book 7, Uttarakhanda, which takes place after the cataclysmic war. He's back at Ayodhya, and they live happily ever after. No, yes. Well, if you like that, just read to the end of the Uttarakhanda of book 6. Just read to the end of book 6 if you'd like a happy ending, and all will be well. But if you look at book 7, you will see a little bit of a different texture, one that implicates this idea of karuna, this karuna rasa. This it harkens back to the Balakanda, the book 1, where we see the slaughter of the male of a pair of Ceres cranes in the act of love, and the female wailing for the fallen mate, and this the anguish and the piteous outcry of the sage in response to the sorrow of the crane, this karuna rasa. So with a flavor like pity, uh, one can't expect it to be a comedy. Now, can one? So a great many tragedies occur in the Uttarakhanda, not least of which the banishment of Sita, the suicide of Lakshman. Rama's fate is also quite intriguing, but nevertheless, a crucial element of these fates is, you guessed it, Durvasa. Okay. So it's a situation where Rama is, he's off in his boardroom in a private meeting. With whom, you ask? With Yama. Yama is the god of the god of the dead. He's the god of the underworld. Okay. And as fate would have it, Yama says, "Look, we're gonna have this secret private meeting here in your boardroom, but nobody can interrupt." Right? And indeed, whomever interrupts, they'll be coming with me to the underworld. Their life will be over. So Rama appoints his most um, trusted support, Lakshmana, his brother, to guard the door so that nobody would interrupt, and therefore nobody would perish through this encounter with Yama, this encounter with death. It's very symbolic, yeah. And what happens? Along comes Durvasa, who apparently is especially fond of um, a warm and sort of exalted reception, fanfare of sorts. right? Some sort of groveling, perhaps. Anyhow, he doesn't get this because Rama is not there. He's with Yama, and Lakshmana is like, pays him some respects and says, "Look, Rama's kind of busy right now. He's taking care of some very important business, and he'll very soon come and attend to you." Well, do we think this sounds respectful or acceptable to so trigger happy and arguably egoic a sage, which to my mind is a walking contradiction, but not without purpose? You know, and Durvāsas says, "Look, I've just come from like this great tapasya, this great austerity that I'm doing, and I demand to be received by the king. You know, it is the kshatriya's dharma to receive brahmanas, etc., etc. One hand washes the other, and if he's too busy to receive moi, I'm just gonna have to like lay a curse on your capital city of Ayodhya, such that calamity will ruin your city." Real charmer, this one. Mm. So what does Lakshmana do? Like, okay, calamity upon Ayodhya, the capital city. Not so good. Bueno. So Lakshmana relents and he interrupts Rama's meeting with Yama, the god of the dead. And of course, this creates dire circumstances for Lakshmana. This is ultimately the demise of Lakshmana. Uh, a story to be fleshed out another day. Here we're just touching on Durvāsa and his role in such tales. Okay. Now, while he is known for curses, what is he known for? He's known and feared as a very powerful sage. He's feared because power can often be used to imperil and to punish, but power can also be used to bless. There's this expression that money is the root of all evil. And when you see how certain people behave once their loved ones pass and there's an inheritance at stake, or even while certain people are still alive, uh, the extent to which folks are busy counting other people's money is a little bit bizarre to my mind. But you see, it's not the money that's the root of the evil at all. Ego. It's toxic ego. Um, in this case, probably greed in particular. Right? Money is energy. It depends on how it's wielded. Yes? There's no question in my mind that should $1 billion magically land into my lap, that Indic studies would be forever changed. At the academy and beyond, probably. It's what will one do? How many homes and vehicles does one need? Honestly, how many standard issue V-neck Gap T-shirts, which is pretty much the only thing I wear when I'm not in a business casual collared shirt. Yeah, does one need? And so money is Shakti, it's energy. And energy could be used for good and ill alike, ending the egoism or altruism of the wielder. The same with the sort of spiritual power of Durvāsas. He's very powerful and so very dangerous because he'll often use that power to punish people who are ill behaved, in his view. But also, there's one time when he pays a visit to the court of Kunti Boja, and he's warmly greeted there. Yay, gold star! He receives a warm reception. We know that this is a bit of a sore spot for him, apparently. And so he decides to stay there for a while. And at the court, there's this princess named Kunti. Yes, the Kunti, who is the mother of the Pandavas. Can we even say she's the mother of the Pandavas? She's the mother of 3 of the 5 Pandavas. Who are the Pandavas? The heroes of the Mahabharata. Pandavas grammatically means the children of Pandu. Pandu is Kunti's wife. Excuse me, clearly I have gender issues. Kunti is Pandu's wife. Pandu is Kunti's husband. Kunti is one of two wives. Kunti and Madri are co-wives of Pandu. Kunti births three of the Pandavas. Madri births two of them, all through a special boon where they're inseminated by gods. And yet they are sons of Pandu. Very, very interesting. More on the Mahabharata another day, but this is the very same Princess Kunti who ends up mothering 60% of the Pandavas. 60% of the sons of Pandu who are not really the sons of Pandu. Okay. Um, she takes it upon herself to serve Durvāsas. And he was not only honored, but he was impressed by her stick to itiveness, her tenacity. Kunti looked after his every need without complaint, no matter what comfort or service he requested. She gladly and graciously complied, so he stays on to see if the princess was merely on her best behavior for a few days or a week, or if she was showing her true self. All facades fade in time, he thought. The days turned into weeks and weeks into months, and there's this expression. I'm not sure that I think it's wisdom in certain situations, but not necessarily all situations. But there is this expression that how does it go? Guests are like fish. After a few days, they start to smell, type thing. The idea of wearing out your welcome. But I do think that threshold is very much dependent upon your relationship with the person and the dynamic at play, and whether or not four of you are in one bedroom type thing, right? Yeah, the days turn into weeks, and the weeks turn into months, and season after season, Princess Kunti goes forth and obliges the requests of the typically irritable sage. And to the surprise of all, I mean, that is a massive power. She's able to pacify. She's the pacifier of this big baby named Durvāsa. Wonderful. After an entire year elapses, a year is very important. It's one cycle of Surya, the sun. Okay. Durvāsas feels compelled to offer Kunti a boon. Gracious Kunti, you've accomplished the impossible. You've pleased the insufferable Durvāsas. Apparently has some self-awareness. I'm amazed at your disposition, seeking always to be of service and finding happiness in that service. Sage Durvāsas, replied the princess, it has been a great honor serving you for this past year. You sages have the luxury to undertake penance whenever you wish, right? You're able to do powerful practices, yeah, to accrue spiritual power. But the rest of us, what do we do? What is our tapasya? What is our puja? What is our means of purification or means of cultivating punya, virtue? We purify ourselves in the mundane world, seeking each task as an opportunity to learn, seeing each task as an opportunity to learn, to grow, to cultivate virtue and skill. Princess, you have undertaken great penance serving me this past year without want of rewards. And thus I wish to bless you with a very special blessing, a special boon indeed. Sage Durvāsas, you honor me with such a divine gift. Since humans scarcely know what is best for themselves, might I ask, Lord Sage, you give me the boon of your own choosing? That's an extraordinarily wise perspective. It's without demonizing desire, yes. Typically, what we want is not really what we want. And it's only until we get what we want that we realize it's not really what we wanted. And sometimes it is what we want and we want more of it. And now we've ignited the fire of desire in a particular domain that'll just devour whatever it can, insatiably so. But Kunti is saying, look, you've got colossal power. There's you're a great chef, and I'm not quite familiar with this cuisine, and you know me and my tastes and my dietary needs. What do you recommend I eat? Right? You are beyond wise, princess, for sages see glimpses of what is to come. None see the whole picture, no matter how attained, exalted the sage, but some are granted insight when needed. Our time together has afforded me a sense of your destiny. You will not understand it now, princess, but there will come a day when the fate of the world will rest upon the boon I now bestow upon you. I have a very powerful secret mantra for you that once uttered will summon the god of your choosing from heaven to sire a son upon you. Come near to me so that I may whisper it into your ear. And of course, this comes to pass. After the passage of many years, Kunti, marries the great king Pandu, becomes his queen. Pandu himself is cursed. Uh, Long story, intriguing story. But he is cursed that whenever next he would embrace his beloved, in an intimate sense, he would pass away. He would die. So much for that. And they needed to produce royal heirs. So she would use the mantra to summon the gods to father sons upon her for the succession of their ancient and noble line, the Kuru dynasty. Interestingly enough, in every generation there is sort of a paternal elision. There's the fathers are the would-be fathers. This is fascinating, especially in a patriarchy. The would-be male heirs are fathered by those who are not directly in the line. It's really fascinating in every generation, actually. Anyhow, it's mentioned these sons would be known as the Pandavas, the great heroes of the Mahabharata, and many events of great importance would rest upon their shoulders. All thanks to Durvāsas. So, trigger happy cursing, gushy blessing, these are sort of two wheels on the chariot of meting out destiny, right? Of these moments of the descent of something larger than life to mold the destiny of the earth plane in some way. Okay. This story was told, as most of the stories on the podcast, not all, was told in the stories behind the poses for a pose named after the sage. I mean, the sage poses are most evidently why this book needs to exist, because when you have a pose named after a sage, what is it about that sage that has to do with that pose? Certainly the career of that sage has everything to do with the nature of the pose. There's no question about that. So this is for Durvāsas. It is not an easy pose. It is a challenging pose, a difficult pose for a difficult sage, hearkening to what to do in difficult times. Yes. How do we find the comfort in the discomfort? Right. Well, let me just end with the sort of spiritual gloss, as it were, from the book. Great power can be used to bless and curse alike. Curses can be transmuted into blessings if one sees them as such. Both blessings and curses are instruments of destiny. Shakuntala was meant to be forgotten by Dushyanta. Lakshmana was meant to interrupt Rama, and Kunti was meant to bear heroes fathered by the gods. This pose is not an easy one. One feels stresses and tensions, much like when one is in the presence of Durvāsas. One may even feel the irritation and agitation he feels when his fuse is about to burn out. Find comfort in the discomfort. Harness and transmute the struggle into greater strength and stillness. Great stress is what transforms coal to diamonds. I hope you've enjoyed this story today. This story never quite resonated as one to share on the podcast. And today, I've been under the weather for a few days, and it's been sort of a bit challenging, a good week or so on and off. And I thought to myself, look, I've got to push through and get this podcast out, because we've been doing this weekly. I don't know how many episodes now, 40-ish, who knows? Relatively new podcast, but I don't want to break a link in the chain. And I thought, wait a minute. This story is exactly the wisdom that I need to push through and get this podcast out. So there you are. Feel free to reach out if I may be of service in some way. Come study with me at IndianWisdomSchool.com. certainly feel free to reach out if you would like some sort of contribution to your yoga teacher training or a talk for your university classroom or whatnot. rajbalkaran.com. Keep well, and I hope that you are well. And if you are unwell, I hope that you're able to find the wellness in the unwellness. Namaste. Take care.